Hey guys, it's Maymay and it's time again for some crafty fun. I showed you guys on Saturday the ink dragging technique that I just kind of played with some distress ink, where I took 2 or 3 different, maybe even 4 different distress ink pads and drug them down to page to get kind of a neat background. Well, I decided to try it with the embossing folders. I mentioned that in Saturday's video and a lot of you guys said you wanted to see it. So what I did to start with was I took out some white Nina 65-pound cardstock and cut a bunch of pieces down to 4 by 5 1/4. Then I went through my embossing folder stash. Now I'm quite the embossing folder hoarder, so I have a lot of them. And I decided, since I was going to be trying this technique out for the first time, I'd pull out a lot of different kinds of folders. Some that were borders, some that were full sheet embossing folders, some that just had, pieces here and there. I just thought it would be neat to kind of see how this works on any kind of folder. So if you're not familiar with embossing folders, this is my Cricut Cuttlebug, and you can purchase folders that are all different kinds of patterns and designs, and you run paper between the rollers of the Cuttlebug and it presses the image into the paper. So that's what I'm doing here. So now that I've gotten all of the pages embossed with the pretty little designs, it's time to ink. But I want to take a second and talk to you about embossing and how the ink works. This first piece I'm showing you is a piece that is embossed with the folder. That means the image is raised up on the folder. The one next to it is a piece that is debossed. This is basically the back side of the same folder. So I just flipped the page over. But see how you get 2 different looks from one folder? Super cool. So I'm just going to play now. And I sped this up because I want you to get to watch me do a lot of these, but I didn't want you to have to be here all day. The cool thing is I did this process and I timed it. I basically had about 66 minutes of footage that I have shrunk down here for you guys to watch. But that means I did this entire process in just a little bit over an hour. And at the end, you'll see that I end up making 12 complete cards in just a few minutes over an hour. And I love those kind of projects. You know, I'm all about mass production. Now on this card, I decided to use 4 different inks. You can see I used the pale lilac, a green, an orange, and then this pretty pink. This just screams Easter to me, and if I've never told you, tulips are my favorite flower. I love them. So look how pretty that turns out. I really like the look of that. Then I try this tree. Now, I decided that you could really do this with 1 color ink, 2 colors, or 3, whatever you like. What I do a little different on this one is I drag that green ink and then a blue that totally doesn't coordinate with the green. It's just a totally different color. And then I take this dark green, and instead of dragging the entire length of the card, I only drag it about halfway up to kind of symbolize grass. So I really like how that looks with that kind of darker look at the bottom of the page. Now for this one, I wanted to try something a little bit different. I'm using 3 colors, 3 very different colors. The first is this pale gray. I decided with this pale gray and this pink color that I wanted to cover as much of the page as I could cover. What I mean by that is, see how I'm letting the pink hit the middle of the frame on the embossing? I'm doing that on purpose. I want those colors to be very prominent. Then I'm going to take the color Black Soot, and instead of dragging on all of the page, I'm going to drag it only on the border and around the edges. I want that border to really be dark, or that embossed frame border. I thought it'd be neat because those birds kind of remind me of crows a little bit, although I think they're not. They kind of give me that feel, and I thought it'd be neat to drag that black around real dark. Isn't that neat? I love this technique. I could do it for days. Now for this one, this image always reminds me of peacock feathers for some reason. So those deep, rich jewel tones. So that's kind of what I tried to mimic here. Now, I know a lot of you are going to see this one and go, oh, you should stop there, because I thought it too, but I decided I'm not going to stop with color. I'm going to keep going with what I had in my mind and see how it goes. So I then added this green color, which I think may be peacock feathers now that I think about it. And look, I could have stopped there, but I didn't. I still think it's beautiful when I keep going. This is a deep brown color that I've added. I love how these look. They're so pretty. I just can't imagine the possibilities with all of the distress ink colors out there, what you could come up with this technique. Now this is the Sunrays embossing folder we carry in the store, and a lot of you guys have asked me to show you something to give you some inspiration for it. So here's what I did. I did a single yellow color all over the card, then a darker yellow over 3/4 of the card, and notice here I bring this kind of coral color just slightly up the bottom of the card, and then I blend it in with another yellow. And that gave this beautiful sunset. I just love how this card looks when it's completed. Now this time I decided I was going to try 3 colors kind of in a variegated or even maybe ombre, but it doesn't really turn out ombre because the colors I chose didn't work that way. But I used a kind of coral and then a yellow, and then I come back in with what really is kind of a darker pink or even a lighter red on the end, and I just let there be 3 colors across this page instead of crossing them over so much, and I really like how that turned out. This one reminded me of a party. It's a confetti folder, so we're going to do rainbow. I just think this will be super cute for a birthday card. And on this one, I'm just using the colors of the rainbow in order, and I'm just doing about a stripe all the way down the card so I can get all 6 colors on the front of the card. I love how this one turned out, and I do think you could go back and blend those colors together if you wanted to, but I think this is so cute. Just looks like a party to me. Love it. Now, a lot of you guys have asked me if you can use different inks besides just the Distress ink, so I thought I would give it a try. These are VersaFine inks. They're pigment inks, so they dry slower, and I did these the same way. I even am going to cross these over each other, but what I do different is I let these sit in between. They need to kind of let that ink soak into the page because they are pigment, and I don't want them to completely blend to a different color. I want to be able to see some of the variations of the color on the card. So I drug 3 colors down just like I did before, and it totally works. You can see they're a little more blended because they're a little wetter, but I still think they look great. And I didn't stop there because I know some of you guys have some of my favorite inks, which are the mini Dewdrop inks from Memento. Love these inks, and I wanted to show you how they look. So check this out. Very light touch because these are a very wet ink pad, but I just drug them down the same way, and I love the effect. I think I could do this for days, and I just want to walk around my craft room and find things to drag ink across. It's just fun. I also love that this is a technique you could sit in your craft room and make for future projects. But I decided to finish these up and make them into cards. So I took this stamp set that I have that's called All Occasions. It's a big stamp set. It's like a 6x8 stamp set. And then a bunch of scrap white paper from my stash. I hold on to my scrap white cardstock into one little cup on my desk. So whenever I need a sentiment spot, I can reach in, grab it, and be ready. Now, I want to see what size strips I need, so this is how I do that. I lay my stamp set into my trimmer and just measure the width of the stamps, and it helps me to know what size strips of paper I need. So I decided to do 1 inch and 1.5 inch, and I even think I added in one that was about 1.25 inches. I can't remember for sure, but I just cut all those scraps that I had down into strips. Then I took a stamp, put it on a block, and started to stamp in the center of all of these strips of paper. In between stamps, when I'm doing something like this, I'll use a wet wipe to clean the ink off because I'm going from one stamp to the other on the same stamp set. This is not how I clean my stamps when I'm really, doing a deep clean. I use Squeaky Clean for that. I think it's amazing. But in between stamping like this, when I know I'm just going to be using one after the other, I use that wet wipe just to do that kind of temporarily. So I ended up stamping more sentiments than I needed, and that's good because it caused me to get into my backgrounds that I did the other day and make some cards out of those as well. So this is a neat idea to me because let's say you wanted to make a gift for someone. How nice is it to make a bunch of cards with a bunch of different sentiments that they can use all year long for anything they might need? I think this is super fun. Now, even more fun, I'm going to lay these patterns back out, look at them, and kind of match up a sentiment with the pattern. It's real easy to do for me because I kind of look at a pattern and think, oh, that needs to be a this kind of card or that needs to be that kind of card. And as you look at them, you'll start to see that too. You'll be like, this is like that confetti one is perfect for a birthday, right? You just know that needs a birthday sentiment. So this is super fun to kind of match everything up. And as I was matching them off the screen, I'm stacking them on top of each other so I know which sentiment goes with which card. Now what I'm going to do is take the sentiment and decide where I want it to be on the card and how I want to finish the sentiment. See how I cut a ribbon banner in that one? But in this one, I decide not to do a ribbon banner, and I decide to kind of put it 3/4 of the way down the card. On this one, I decide to take my corner punch and punch all the corners to make this kind of look like a little placard on the front of the card. I thought that would be different and kind of cute. So then I just stack it up on top of the others and keep going. I place it wherever I think it looks best on the card. And I do that for all of them. Just pick it up, move it around, and see where you like it. Then most of them I cut the little ribbon banner in. Some of them I used the corner punch or even a corner. I don't think I used a corner rounder, but you could have. And you can just play and get fancy as you want to get. I also love that the white sentiment pieces work well with the white background paper. You know how sometimes you have a white sentiment, but you have kind of a beige card, and that doesn't always work? I really like how these match. Now, this card kind of gave me a little grief at first, and I knew I wanted this sentiment to be in the center of the card. So here's what I decided to do. I took my ruler and an X-Acto knife, and I just sort of eyeballed this and made a slice in the card inside the frame, but on either side so that I could slide that sentiment in and make it look like it's kind of threaded through the page. I thought this would be neat, and it would give me a way to finish off that sentiment in such a way that it looked like it really belonged there, and I really love how this one turned out. I may have to do more cards like this. Isn't that cool? I love it. Then I just flipped it over. I put a little art glitter glue on either side of the little banner piece underneath just to hold it in place until I glued it down onto the front of the final card front. I really like how this one turned out. I like how they all turned out. What am I talking about? So I keep going. This card ends up going landscape, portrait. I don't even know how I ended up doing this card, but I thought it could go either way, and I love this sentiment with it. So just one after the other. And again, I stacked them on top of each other so I would remember, where they go. Each time I did any work, I just stacked them back on top of each other. For this guy, I decided to trim that sentiment down a little bit and put him more in the center of the Sunrays. I thought that would be really pretty coming out of the bottom center. And I did again use the corner punch. It's a great way to use some of your punches and your corner rounders and your tools and things like that in your stash. Now it's time to start putting the sentiments onto the card fronts. I did some with foam squares, and I did some glued straight to the card. It just really is a matter of what you like and what your eye is drawn to. I feel like some of the cards really lean themselves to dimension, and then some of them just look really good with the sentiment stuck directly down. But that is totally preference for you. This is also where I used some of those patterns from last Saturday. Remember I told you I made those patterns and I hadn't used them yet, but I made extra sentiments. So this is the tile pattern that I did on Saturday, and I thought it'd be pretty to bring those out and not waste those sentiments that I had just stamped. A great way to use them all up. Now this one was fun and challenging. I could not decide where I wanted to put that hello sentiment, but I knew I wanted it on this background. So then I started laying it on the diagonal and realized that it fits perfectly inside of some of those diagonal tiles, and I decided to put it there. I really actually love how this card turned out. This is probably not something I would have thought of ahead of time, but playing around as you're going, it's kind of one of those happy accidents, and I really love how this one turned out. I think it'd be neat to do a whole set of cards on this diagonal way like that. All right, so now in the same, vein of mass production, because I love that, I take all of my card bases and I cut them down all at the same time. I'm using a 110-pound Neenah white cardstock, which I think is the most beautiful base there is that I know of. And then I'm going to score them all and crease them all at the same time. So I'm just scoring them at 5.5, folding them and creasing them with the bone folder. I love to do things assembly line because I think it really makes a process or a project go faster that way. Then it's just time to adhere our pre-made card fronts to the cards. Now I'm putting this onto all white card bases on purpose. I'm going to leave the insides of these cards blank. That way, if I decide to use these throughout the year, I can come back and stamp a sentiment later. Or if I want to give these away as a gift, what a perfect note card set for someone, and they can handwrite on the inside, or you could even include stamped sentiments on pieces they could glue inside or even just use a tape runner to stick inside. But I go through and glue these fronts onto all of the card bases. It's hard to believe you can do this in slightly over an hour. I know that seems crazy, but I just got in the craft room and got started and did not stop until I had completed 12 cards. Yep, 12 cards in 6 minutes over an hour. So there you go. This is what they ended up looking like, and I really love them. I think they turned out very fresh and clean looking. I think the white border really helps them to be real fresh looking. Imagine making these for friends, for family, for birthday presents, this whole stack of cards to give to somebody, and they're just gorgeous. I love how they look. Now, I want to see what you guys do when you start making these projects. So please head over to our Facebook group and join the group, which is called Maymay Made It, and so did I, and show me what you're doing with this technique and embossing. I know you guys will do amazing. This is me looking for my favorite card to put on top. If I were given this as a gift, I'd tie some envelopes to it with a ribbon, and there you go. Hey, thanks so much for watching, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.